The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us this morning to discuss 2015's top threats and analysis of some recent attacks. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by Sagi Kratu, who's one of the senior global security analysts at Checkpoint within their threat prevention team. He's joining us from Israel today. So really glad to have him on board. Firstly, just want to say that please do let us know if you have any issues on audio or the slides today via the questions box. Otherwise, I will be starting the introduction for today's webinar. So firstly, today's objective, just a little bit on what I've asked you to join us today. We want to give customers insight into common forms of the most prevalent threats affecting UK and international businesses and the solutions available to mitigate these. So there have been a lot of attacks in the press, but actually those are almost the tip of the iceberg in terms of the actual attacks that are happening at the moment. And what we want to encourage customers and make them aware of is what they can learn from lots of different attacks that the experts at Checkpoint are seeing globally, and also some of the modern solutions that they can use to mitigate those and what's available in your arsenal, so to speak, to fight back against those threats. So a little bit of agenda. I'll give a very brief Bytes introduction. I will keep it brief because many of you know us already. Pass over to Sagi. Sagi will be covering what threats are increasing, what we can learn from the big name attacks that happened last year. He'll take us through some common recent attacks, how we can fight back against modern threats, and then some of the solutions that are around specifically for dealing with new malware. A little bit of housekeeping for the call. Lines are on mute throughout the call. Although questions are welcome, we will be doing an interactive question and answer session at the end with Sagi and myself, so please do post them via the chat box. Today we are going to be talking about strategy and threats rather than any commercials around products. Of course, those discussions are welcome if there's anything that you see in the Checkpoint solution suite that is of interest, and we will be encouraging you to contact your account managers at the end of the call if that is the case. We do have a survey at the end of today's webinar. Please do fill it in. We want to make sure that these sessions are as relevant as possible for you and continue to hit the mark in terms of the content, so please do fill them in. And lastly, there is a recording available for the session, so we'll be sharing that so you can share those within your wider teams and businesses after the session. So a little bit about Bytes. We are part of the £2.3 billion Altron Electronics Group, which is floated on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And within the Bytes Technology Group in the UK, there are two core businesses. Firstly, Bytes Security Partnerships, that's ourselves. We are the network security specialist company within the group. We focus solely on security solutions, hardware and software support and consultancy around those solutions that we work with. And secondly, the larger part of our UK business is software services, who are a very large licensing and software asset management specialist reseller. So they're one of the leading Microsoft UK value-added resellers, Adobe, Oracle and infrastructure licensing. They're your guys to go to for that. So that's how we look in the UK. A little bit about Bytes Security Partnership Specialists. We were bought by Bytes about nearly 4 years ago now, and our aim since that has been to combine the agility and specialist of that small independent specialist reseller that we were, coupling that with the backing of and the resources from a large global software group. Since we've been acquired, we've seen continuous yearly growth, but we've continued to solely focus on security, and as part of that, we're really passionate about security education and future-proofing UK businesses against the modern threats out there, and that's why we run sessions like today. We do work very closely with a hand-picked amount of partners. For that reason, we do hold top partner statuses, and that allows us not only to add value to customers commercially, but also to deliver on the technical side of the delivery package, award-winning support and consultancy. We're very proud of our support, and we offer direct-to-engineer support for all of the solutions that we are involved in. So that's enough about us. What's occurring out in the marketplace? Essentially, attacks are rising in complexity. It's not just the volume of the attacks, it's actually the diverse attack methods that the bad guys, so to speak, are using to infiltrate organisations. Everyone knows about Sony and Target and some of the large hacks that happen, but they're really the tip of the iceberg, and just the common thread that comes through these attacks is that there is a common attack pattern which businesses can learn from, and that's specifically in some of the smaller attacks which Sagi will take you through in the webinar. Services are needed to detect and mitigate attacks as well as just prevent them. There's a real focus at the moment and a desire in the industry to look at attack detection, and new malware is on the rise. The old AV and IPS signature-based methods, although very valuable in detecting known malware, aren't cutting the mustard against some of these new strains of malware which are coming out. What's the good news, and why are we talking to you today? Well, there's a common pattern, as I've mentioned, to many attacks, and Sagi will talk to you about some of the key blockage points that you can put in your organisation to break those attack chains. The vendors aren't sleeping. They're aware that new malware is on the rise, and they are developing some very exciting new technologies to combat those, and they're also moving towards a more mitigation and detection element to their technologies, even in the traditional firewall space, which Checkpoint really dominate the market. So that gives a brief overview of why we asked you to join us today. All that it remains for me to do is to thank you guys for attending, and also pass over to Sagi, who will take you through the analysis of modern attacks. Over to you, Sagi.
Thank you, Shauna. Let's just make sure that everybody can see my screen.
Yes, I can. Thank you. If anyone has any visual problems or audio problems, please do let us know.
Yes. All right. So good morning, everyone, and thank you, Shauna, for this lovely introduction. As you all know, every year Checkpoint publishes the findings that it observes of security events to better inform our customers, our partners, and general public about security incidents, as well as how they can mitigate them. So in this presentation, I will talk about exactly that, what's been happening and how we can solve these issues. So again, and the idea that the technology is everywhere. Today, everything is connected to the internet, from, of course, the PC and the mobile to the refrigerator and the microwave. And in 2015, the annual report, we analyzed trends from events discovered through ThreatCloud. ThreatCloud is a Checkpoint quote-unquote product that collects a lot of information. This specific report has been collecting information from over 16,000 organizations around the world. Over 1,300 manual security checkups have been performed, and of course from a wide range of businesses and industries. Now, the nice is the spread of the information. We're talking about over 122 countries, and 300,000 hours of monitoring has gone into our trend analysis. So we have a lot of information. When we look at anything over time, some of the mystery dissolves and trends emerge that can help us predict the future. The world of cyber threats has evolved over the past 25 years. Probably all of you remember what it was in the 90s, where you had like a virus that the whole point was to restart your computer. That was the whole point. Well, we're way past that, and today cybercriminals find pathways around these old types of protections. So how they do it? Cybercriminals study defensive structures and think through how they can achieve their desired outcome. For example, they have one big advantage. Launching attacks is very easy Okay, you can download it from anywhere in the internet and just start blasting away. Very low risk. Nobody keeps IP addresses to pinpoint the user to the IP address if it's a dynamic IP address. And of course, it's inexpensive. It doesn't cost. You can do it from your home. You don't have to invest a lot of funds into this. So let's see some of the trends. So what we know is that, first of all, 2014 saw a lot of unprecedented breaches, exploding rates of new malware, and of course, a huge increase in DDoS type of attacks. I'd like to take you back and share with you a true story, and it's about a German steel mill. The report was issued by Germany's Federal Office for Information Security, and it indicates the attackers gained access to the steel mill through the plant's business network. So for those of you who are thinking forward and hold on, what's the business network has to do with the production network? Okay, they should be separated. Well, they weren't. Most in the security industry know about spearphishing. The concept of an email coming from an from a known and trusted source that has malicious content. It's estimated that 91% of hacking attacks begin with phishing or spearphishing emails. It only takes one click to launch the payload. And remember the saying, I always say this in my lectures, what people usually do is they click steel mill story begins. So with a spearphishing attack, here's how it worked. Phase 1 started as the process. An email got sent that appeared to be coming from a trusted source. The intent of the email was to trick the recipient into opening a malicious attachment or visiting a malicious website where malware was downloaded to the individual computer. So they opened the file, it went to the outside world, downloaded the actual payload, then detonated, of course, on the computer. When I say detonated, it just ran on the computer. It's worth noting that a study done by Online Trust Alliance, talking about more than 1,000 breaches in the first half of 2014, more than 25% of them were caused by employees clicking on the phishing links. So the most dangerous entity in the organization is the entity that sits between the chair and the screen. Okay, they do the most damage. So when they click, the payload is launched. It is believed that this is how the attackers gain initial access to the steel mill. In most phishing attacks, the payload will exploit a vulnerability in employees' computers, allowing external access. Once that access is gained, additional attacks can be launched. And again, the vulnerability of the exploit is usually due to unpatched systems, or, of course, what we'll talk about in the next few slides, what we call zero-day, that nobody knows about. The initial infected network is often called the beachhead. Now, you notice all the terms here, cyber war, beachhead, these are taken from actual war scenarios. So it's an actual war between the white hats and the black hats. Or a stable starting point from which internal movements through the network, what we call lateral movements, can take place. In ideal Star Trek network, you should have segmentation, so you won't be able to jump from one network to another. This wasn't the case for the steel mill. The network was completely flat. So once the attacker got a foothold on one of the systems, they were able to explore the company's network, including the industrial components of the production network. The industrial controls were supposed to be completely segmented from the internet-connected network, but it was not. So in the case, the number of failures accumulated into a complete, the way the report calls it, as a result, the plant was unable to shut down a blast furnace in a regulated manner, which resulted in a massive damage to the system. So accumulated errors in the infrastructure in terms of how they set it up, how they designed it, this is what caused the main problem. Here are some more information about organizations which are constantly being attacked and breached. The damage includes data loss, business interruption, hurting the company's public image, with costs running in the billions. Here's an example of Adobe breach, which hit more than 150 million usernames and passwords, actually stole that information. target, a lot of us heard about it. I'll talk a bit about that a bit more. And of course, 4.6 million Snapchat users and phone numbers were leaked. And again, the numbers here are in the millions. Attacks are not always motivated by money. With the evolution of activism into hacktivism, attacks are happening because of political or personal agendas. One of the most infamous hacktivism groups is Anonymous, which encourages attacks in open forums and posts attack instructions and tools on publicly available websites, each time targeting someone else in corresponding with their agenda. And I'll show you an example which is close to home in the UK. Attacks and breaches can happen anywhere, from governments to corporations, with tools and instructions so readily available, no one is immune. Let's talk about the just recap about 2 slides about them. So in terms of specifics, here's a recent example from 2013, if I'm not mistaken, of how serious a security breach can be. Hackers broke into target's computer system, installing data mining software on the actual cash registers on which credit cards are read. This getting the full information of the card, including the owner details, card numbers, and CVV numbers. All right. So now Target has 40,000 of these machines, these cash registers, spread over almost 1,800 stores. The scale of the theft was so immense that it's flooding the underground black markets in the following weeks. That's what happened. I think even today you can still find actual credit card numbers going from $20 to about $100 per card. So here, in terms of pointers, I'd like to share with you something. So more of these incidents from the last month, we're talking about beginning of August till now, they show that hackers are not resting from providing or creating malwares for iOS that infect right now only jailbroken iOS devices, stole account information. We have, of course, the ransomware for Android. So a lot of stuff going on right now, from Iran to the UK to Japan. They're everywhere. No one is safe. For example, hackers attacked the NCA, the UK National Crime Agency, with a DDoS attack as revenge for arresting 6 people allegedly using Lizard Stressor, which is a DDoS tool. So again, it's a revenge. A couple of people went, attacked this agency because of the arresting some, I guess, of their friends or something like that. So stealing personal information, to all the giving thanks to all the Shifu Trojan, which is a very famous one. It's still being used. Again, we think it's from a Russian origin. It targeted 14 Japanese banks and electronic banking platforms in various countries, for example, Japan, Austria, and Germany. Japanese sites were compromised and used as command and control servers, and so on and so on. Something from the last month, specifically to the UK, Carphone Warehouse. They, via breach, stole 2.4 million Brits are at risk. They stole about 90,000 parameters or information about users, credit card information. A dating site, after the famous one that we don't need to call it by its name, there's Plenty of Fish, for example. And the story of Plenty of Fish is kind of interesting because it wasn't actually Plenty of Fish's fault. They used, they have advertisement on their site, and that advertising is pulled from another site. Now, what the hackers did, they hacked to that site where they pull the ads from, and now every time you go, or not now they I bet they fixed the problem, but you went to Plenty of Fish. Once you see the ad, it actually installs a malware on your computer, and that's it. It's important to state that these attacks can be blocked and prevented by the Checkpoint Threat Prevention Solution. It's not an advanced solution. It's a very basic IPS or AV blade, so you know about that. Also, from yesterday Checkpoint released WhatsApp Web Security Flaw. I'm not sure any of you heard about this yet. And by the way, this flaw has already been fixed. What we do when we find a problem, we talk to the vendor or the company that we found the problem on their site, on their machines, whatever, and we give them a chance to fix it before we go public. This is part of the Checkpoint White Hat disclaimer. So the issue was that by sending malicious code hidden as a contact detail, you know how you share contacts via WhatsApp, you send a contact, it would allow the attacker to own the phone and use it as a bot or as a type of a distribution center of malware. So you can use that phone to send contacts to all the contacts and then infect them as well. So how does it actually happen? We talked about the attacks, and let's now talk about exactly when we understand the gravity of the attacks. Let's take a look into the life cycle of the modern security breach. So a modern attack is usually comprised of three parts, and again we're looking at it from the attacker's point of view right now. The social engineering as the first stage, malware injection, and finally remote control. These are the let's say the common denominators of a modern attack. So the first stage is social engineering, as I stated. Modern attacks are driven by infiltration of network via specific individuals. The key is the ability to identify a bait, understand his or her relationship in order to gain access to this specific information and lure her or him to take action that will enable this infiltration. Now, in today's world of social network and social media, it's kind of easy. You know, you log into their LinkedIn account, you log into their Facebook account, you see their information. If they're going on a trip, then send them phishing or spearphishing email, getting them ready for a trip. You know, click on this to get your itinerary and so on. So it's a lot easier today to understand this, to go with social engineering. The next step is to use the information in order to gain access. So with a very naive but forged email to Lucy, for example, from who seems to be a professional acquaintance, simply by clicking on an attachment, or in other cases using an unknown or infected USB stick, or clicking on a naive website, a naive-looking website, you can plant a malware on your computer using exploiting known vulnerabilities in common software. Now, the idea here is there was a study done on USBs on the street, and I can't remember who did the study, but what they did, I think it was about 5 years ago or 4 years ago, they dispersed USB sticks in a parking lot or in like in a mall, and the size was about I think it was 128 meg, and they saw people picked it up and then looked at it, 128 meg, and it's not even worth it. It's not enough space for me to plug into my computer. And then they started with a 1 gig, and then a 4 gig, and then an 8 gig, and so on. And the most plugged in ones were 4 gigs, and it was like 70% were 4 gigs, 20% were 8 gigs, and so on and so on. So size in this case does matter. The larger the USB stick is, more likely for people to plug it into their computer. So it's very interesting. Let's move on. So once the malware is injected, the next step is for such a malware or software agents, bots or named as remote access tools, RAT is a type of bot, to contact the command and control in order to receive instructions. And it does that every minute, every 20 minutes, depending on what's programmed. At this stage, the machine is hacked and will obey the remote command from uploading data to remote servers, local configuration changes, execution of other software, propagation of the malware to other machines, and participate in a coordinated attack. So imagine now you have a botnet of 10,000 computers sending emails to a certain destination, sending DDoS type of attacks to a site. It's a lot of power. Now we are in complete control of the computer and can use it to do our bidding. That's it. It's ours. It's owned. How does these threats affect you? Do the threats seem overwhelming, or are these threats off your radar? Let's bring this conversation closer to home. Let's talk numbers. There are about 10 million known attacks per day, which means you don't need advanced solutions to solve them. Regular IPS, regular antivirus solves them. 50,000 new bot command and control addresses are generated every day. And every second, a new malware is created. The earlier attacks may not be cyber hype, and we have more real stories to prove it. Check Point researched the problem and reported on the breadth and frequency of these attacks on organizations. Let's talk about numbers, just to make sure we all follow up. We talked before that over 16,000 organizations were checked, over 1 million smartphones were checked. All in all, 122 countries, as you remember, and 300 hours of monitoring have gone into this trend analysis. Here's a little sample of this analysis. So you think there are no bots in your network? Are you sure? Our research shows something else completely. 80% of organizations are infected with this kind or another kind of bot. Every minute, a host accesses a malicious website. 97% of breaches were avoidable, again, with simple tools. Now that we've seen what's out there, how can we protect ourselves?
Sagi, I think I've lost audio. I'm not sure.
Email that looks like they look closely, you might think it's legitimate. This attempt to deliver malware is not unusual. Okay, hold on.
So I think we lost malware. We lost audio just on the previous slide.
No, I'm. Okay. This one?
Yes, it's all loud and clear now.
All right. Okay, great. So let's start like this. So now we're going to look at the attack process from the victim's point of view. So would you open this attachment? Okay, it looks legitimate, right? From Citibank and so on. Or maybe you have ordered a product online and seen a product shipping email that looks like this. If you didn't look any closer, you might think that it was legitimate. This attempt to deliver malware is not unusual. For example, around Valentine's Day, infected e-cards were making the rounds. If you received a message with Valentine card for you.zip and open it, you would have become infected with a backdoor Trojan. Another example is that the Wall Street Journal stated that over 90% of targeted emails use malicious file attachment as the payload or as the actual infection source. So the attacks are especially dangerous when they leverage zero-day vulnerabilities, right? When we know what an attack looks like, we can do something about it. What happens when we don't know? For example, such an attack called Duco, or some have called it the son of Stuxnet, used zero-day vulnerabilities in businesses. Business documents such as Word, such as PDF files and so on, to compromise target window operating systems to harvest information. The telltale signs include process injection, downloading and installing additional software drivers, modification to the registry, and contact command and control servers using HTTP and HTTPS traffic, which is legitimate, port 80, port 443, and so on. So what are zero-day attacks? And why should we be concerned? These attacks that have no known defenses. Okay, so what do we do with something we don't know? In 2012, there were over 200 new vulnerabilities in applications we use every day, like Adobe, Java, Office, Explorer, Firefox, and so on and so on. So, and malware variant like iSpy can create with a click of a button in the time I described this slide. So you could create like 60 malware variants based on a certain malware. You can create that much. Now, Dark Reading reported that up to 100,000 new malware samples are created each day. So now let's talk about mitigating it or defending against it. Check Point has the IPS blade, which stops exploits of a known vulnerability. So once you know about it, we sign it here with our R&D people, and we develop a signature and send it around Check Point customers via auto update, and you're protected. The antivirus blocks the actual download of malware-infested files because we test them first. Anti-bot says, okay, let's assume you already got infected. What do we do now? So we detect and prevent bot damage. So we cut off their oxygen, quote unquote, or their internet connection. But what about new attacks? Stuff that we haven't seen before. This is why we're leveraging the Check Point Sandblast emulation service. Sandblast is a market, it's positioned in the market in a way where it doesn't matter if we know about the attack or don't know about the attack. We run it and see what happens, and I'll explain how we do it. So the idea is that we inspect the file, we emulate the file, we prevent, and then we share our findings with the rest of the world. And when I say the rest of the world, the rest of the Check Point ecosystem. Let's dig deeper into this. So when I say inspect, it requires no infrastructure change or adding devices. You have your Check Point device on premise. It's a checkbox starting R77, and you have, at least as a demo or as in eval, you have the ability to run this in the cloud. We identify the files in emails because we can sit in the MTA, we can sit inline email attachments and downloads over the web. And we send the file to a virtual sandbox. During that time, we emulate the file. And we emulate multi-OSs all at the same time, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows XP. You can even have your own OS or your own VM running if it's something specifically for you. We open the file and we monitor and record abnormal behavior. For example, when you take a doc file, you open it and it starts removing or adding registry keys or adding files or contacting the internet, you know that something is wrong here. It's not a legitimate file. So as I stated, we monitor behavior for file system changes, system registry, network connections, system processes, and so on. So for example, this is a standard CV that we got in Check Point, and it's from a referral. So how do you know that it's safe? I say let's run it through Sandblast. That's our threat emulation, and see what we get. And this is what we've done. We ran it, and we got a report. We saw that this file affected 9 files. Okay, we can see here even we have a pop-up of ransomware. Okay, and again, this is all detonated in a closed environment, so it doesn't even affect your organization. We have 31 affected registry keys. We have 4 affected processes. Attempted network connection. So we know that this is for sure a not legitimate file. So what we do is we prevent. Okay, we send the remark to the gateway, block this file, don't allow it into the network. Inline stopping of malicious files on any gateway, this is unique to Check Point. Other vendors, what they do is usually let the first file in while they do the emulation, because the emulation on their part takes time, and I'll show you that in a second, takes time. And because they don't want to depreciate customer experience or user experience, they let the first file in, and then from the second file, they can start blocking. This is a very big no-no in the Check Point vocabulary. Security is number 1. Once we discover that this is malicious, what we do is share it with the rest of the Check Point ecosystem via Threat Cloud. And again, Threat Cloud has huge amounts of information. Every Check Point gateway is connected to the Threat Cloud to gain updates, whether it's IPS, antivirus, and so on and so on. And some customers opt to share information as well. You don't have to share information if you don't want to. So we stop undiscovered attack because it's true behavioral analysis. It's dynamic analysis. It's not just static analysis. with the Threat Cloud Sandblast solution. Another example from real life, on May 2013, a customer noticed that a file is being detected as zero-day attack. It was an email coming from Citibank with a title statement ID. The customer was expecting such an email from his bank and did not understand why the system blocked it. After talking and providing this email to Checkpoint, our analyst detected this file as malicious that exploited a vulnerability in Word, Office Word, installing a bot agent and trying to communicate with CNC Command and Control Center. Our Sandblast solution, which is our sandboxing solution, detected and prevented this attack that at this time was only known to 2 antivirus vendors in the entire industry out of about 50. At the following week, the Sandblast system detected this exact same file at additional organization running the system, and at this time stopped it as it was already shared with Threat Cloud. So they didn't have to go through emulating the file again or running it through Sandbox because they knew the file already. This is the smarts of the machine. And again, the information about the vulnerability, it installed a bot, and so on. So I'm asking you, is this enough? You probably know the answer to this. No, because a Sandbox can be fooled. Current generation of Sandbox, what we call Generation 1, or the first generation, are prone to evasions. Hackers have developed skills to bypass the behavioral detection technology utilized by traditional Sandbox products such as FireEye, Palo Alto Networks, and many others. The most dangerous targeted attacks, the attacks that are likely to cause strategic damage and carried out by competent hackers who possess these evasion skills. Anti-evasion techniques incorporated by Sandbox products provide only partial protection. Attackers constantly come up with sophisticated new evasion to trick them yet again. Evasion is not only for the savviest attackers. Readily available tools, again, are at the disposal of even novice attackers, allowing them to create mutating and polymorphic malware that can bypass not only AV products, but also Sandbox anti-evasion technology. So, with the introduction of these evasion tools, existing Sandbox solutions are rapidly becoming less effective. But there's an issue because inspection takes time, typically several minutes. Many solutions allow malicious files to reach the user while the Sandbox inspects the in the background. This is what I talked about the other vendors, right? For example, this company has this file called XBT. Okay, nobody can actually emulate this file. So what do? Not all solutions can operate in prevent mode, as in what we call block from the first file. So again, what do? As a result, many Sandbox are deployed in non-blocking. So how can we stop hackers from evading detection and infiltrating your network? We have to rethink the whole solution, right? This is exactly what we've done in Checkpoint. What we've done is, aside from the behavioral analysis in the OS level, we've added CPU level solution, which brings us to the highest catch rate. It's evasion resistant. It catches threats earlier, more file types and operating systems. Let's dig deeper into this. The attack chain, at least in data files, let's see exactly how it works. So vulnerability is to trigger an attack through unpatched software or zero-day vulnerability. An exploit means that you bypass the CPU and OS security controls using exploitation methods. What it means is that Microsoft came up with different protections called DEP and DSLR and so on that don't allow you to run programs on the CPU and memory that have not been there already. So the OS is the one who's controlling this. Shellcode means that after you run the exploit, you actually run the shellcode. That's the actual code that it activates an embedded payload to retrieve the malware itself. So the payload can be, the shellcode can be very small. The payload is downloaded. And then, of course, you run the malicious code. Simple as that. Now, what happens if we can identify the malware or the exploit, the malware or the evasion or whatever at the exploit stage. Remember that most of the things are discovered here. When you run the malware, then the OS level becomes, emulates the file, runs the malware, see what happens, and decides if it's malicious or not. But again, we're prone to evasion. So what do we do? If we can find the malware here at this stage, we're golden. So we know that in terms of vulnerability, there are thousands. In terms of exploits, there's a handful. And in terms of where you run the evasion code, you run it as the shell code. So imagine we can stop it, as I stated, in the exploit. So detect using of exploit method. It's a narrow, very narrow playground, and it's very few exploitation methods. No one, and new ones are very rare. Now, you can stop it before the attack begins, before the chance to even run. How do we do it? Detection occurs before the evasion code activates. So if something happens that we call an attack at the exploit stage, and this is called ROP, okay, the type of exploit return on a procedure is called ROP, and it's very run. And of course, I don't care what type of attack it is, before it even has a chance to metastasize.
Sorry, Sagi, can you go back to
This
the last...
discovery and prevention happens in...
Sagi, can you go back to the last slide?
Happens in 1 to 2 minutes. Yep.
We lost audio on that slide. A couple of people have commented. Apologies, guys, the joys of live demos. So if you could just start from that slide, then that would be great. So we're back up to speed. I think the connection just dropped for a minute.
Yep, no problem. Yeah. So the added value of adding CPU level sandboxing is that we're adding capabilities of evasion resistance. Okay, the detection occurs before the evasion code activates. It's very accurate because it's not based on statistics or heuristics. It's based on exactly what's happening. That's why it's fewer false positives. It's so efficient, it's fast, it identifies the attack at its infancy. And it's malware agnostic, so it doesn't matter what type of attack it is. If it utilizes this type of exploit based on rope or that, we stop it. So this discovery and prevention happens in 1 to 2 minutes. In case you're worried that the sandblast might block good documents or interrupt business access to key files, we have good news. We use patent-pending technology that has been proven to emulate over 250,000 files with 0 false positives. Okay, and we keep innovating into that. And this is what I wanted to show you about a check we've done. We can see different vendors at the time it takes them to emulate the files. Let's take the most one, which is 79 minutes. This is why they choose to send the file to the user while they're emulating it in the background. And then from the second file, they start to block. Okay, you can see checkpoint up to 4 minutes. And again, in real world, it's a bit less. It's the fastest sandbox in the industry. So in addition to zero-day detection solution, which take time to take and block threats, depending upon the solution used, preventing a zero-day attack and detecting and blocking unknown malware can take anywhere as much as 79 minutes, as you remember, with competitor solutions. So the malware won't wait for the sandbox to catch up. So again, I ask you to address this time gap, right? What do we do? Even 79 minutes, right? So what if instead of looking for malware, we could do the following? Eliminate all risks immediately. Now you can, with checkpoint threat extraction. It's a radical approach to provide complete threat removal, safeguarding the most commonly used documents within the organization today. Sandblast threat extraction provides preemptive protection from threats by delivering 0 malware documents in 0 seconds. It's preemptive, it's zero malware in 0 seconds. How does it work? Takes the file, rebuilds it, scrubs it, rebuilds it, and then sends it to the user. Threat extraction takes just seconds to remove macros, embedded objects and files, external links, documents, properties, and other exploitable content. The file is quickly reconstructed and delivered, ensuring zero delay delivery of safe documents. We tested this on a wide variety of files. It takes about 0.2 seconds from the point that it arrived to the point that it arrives to the user. So this whole thing is becoming part of the Checkpoint multi-layer protection against all incoming cyber threats. Sandblast. This is what we call our solution right now. And the top reasons customers pick Checkpoint Sandblast solution, and again, Sandblast incorporates inside the Sandbox, the CPU level emulation, and of course threat extraction. We provide, as part of threat prevention, a complete threat solution for known and unknown threats, and it works directly with your existing infrastructure. There's no need to install any new equipment. So to summarize, Checkpoint prevents zero-day attacks, stopping undiscovered malware, prevents infection from malicious documents and executables, simple deployment requires no infrastructure change, and it's part of the Checkpoint multi-layered threat prevention, which means that you can manage everything from a single console. It's a single point of view, and it's completely integrated into our smart event and all the notification centers. Together, we secure the future. That's it for me, and I would be happy to get some questions.
Perfect. So if anyone's got any questions on the presentation, any of the specific threats and the attack examples which Sagi has referenced throughout the presentation, or also on any of the technologies, how they work, etc. Now, please do put them in. You have a questions function on your screens, so please do put them in. I have one question to kick off with, and then we'll start with any others that people do present. So I have one question here, Sagi. In Sandbox, this customer only inspects the attachment email coming from the external domain or public. What's your thoughts on that?
Just to make sure I understand the question, does the Sandbox catch the attachment if it's coming from outside the organization? Is that the question?
Oh, it doesn't. If the person who posed it could clarify what their follow-up question is. They had commented that they only inspect the attachment email coming from the external domain or public domain. I think what they wanted to potentially be asking is around.
Okay, so it's a matter of policy. So it's up to you. So if you want to, it doesn't make sense to emulate files that are already inside the organization because they're already there. They've done their damage. This is why we have our post-infection solution called Antibot. But the idea is that once you activate the Sandbox capabilities, incoming to the organization from emails that are outside your domain. It also makes sense to incorporate our endpoint solution with our TE, which means that, for example, if someone took a USB stick, plugged it into your to the PC, laptop, whatever, the endpoint would kick in and send the actual file you're trying to open or you're trying to copy into emulation because you're outside the organization right now because you're with a laptop, supposedly a salesperson, and emulate the file, get a verdict, and then you would be able to continue your work. I hope that answers your question.
Please let me know if that doesn't, to the gentleman that asked that. It does. Great. So I have another question from another caller who's asking about the cleaning of the document example. Does it remove all links or embedded documents? How does it work exactly?
So what it does, it takes the non-active content, for example, resume information or name, the actual text, and then transfers it to a new file, new doc file. Now you have the opportunity as well, aside from just cleaning it. For example, you got a doc file and then you send to the user a clean doc file. You can actually flatten it out completely, provide, let's say, very close to 100% secure document by converting it to PDF. The chance of an active malware that running on doc converted to PDF to keep on running is very close to zero. I've never seen something that works in doc and works in PDF as well.
Okay, so it sounds like there's sort of multiple different ways it can be done. Okay, I have another question regarding the fit with some of the more modern solutions alongside existing AV. So it reads, how does this sit alongside any existing antivirus or content filtering solutions an organisation has in place already? Does it replace them, or does it work as an additional layer of protection? And I guess that would apply to checkpoint solutions and non-checkpoint solutions.
Okay, so in both cases, it's always an add-on. Okay, it's always an add-on solution, whether it's what we call in checkpoint the multi-layer protection. Okay, we prefer for you to work with the checkpoint NGTP, the threat prevention suite, which includes the antivirus, IPS, anti-bot, and so on. But if you have, for example, Symantec antivirus, that's on the endpoints, right? You usually don't have a network device that does antivirus as well. If you do, great. We don't want to get you, investing more money in replacing something that is working for you. It's important to understand that antivirus is no longer enough, because that's for known stuff. What's happening with unknown stuff? That's why you can put our Sandblast appliance or use our Sandblast cloud to send that information. For example, if a checkpoint firewall running NGTX, which is the threat emulation, threat extraction, and also anti-bot, and so on, running on the perimeter gateway, you can activate Sandblast, which is threat emulation. You activate that, and then it becomes a file collector. It stops once it sees emails coming in. It stops it as an MTA, sends the file to the cloud to emulate. Once it's back, it sends it to your email server. So it acts as sort of like a mail relay. It's not instead of your antivirus. Okay? If you have already an antivirus running on the checkpoint gateway, there's no point of running another antivirus. And again, I'm not talking about the endpoints right now. Only talking about the network layer, the network level. And also you can, instead of sending it to the cloud because of standards or whatever reason, you can purchase the Sandblast appliance, which sits as a local emulator, somewhere to the side, doesn't have to be inline. And then the perimeter gateway sends all the files to be emulated there and then returns to your email server. Okay, again, adding the layers to make the mesh more dense. Less stuff will come in.
Thank you very much. We can also send you some specific documentation on how it fits post-webinar, so I can make sure that your account manager provide that for you. So I'm going to take two more questions just before we head off, because I'm conscious of the fact that we're nearing 11 o'clock. One question here: would the threat extraction solution protect against vulnerabilities in the endpoint software applications that may have zero-day exploits, e.g. Adobe Acrobat PDF files?
Okay, that's a good question. The idea is this: the exploit, is in the software, okay, that is running. For example, Adobe 9, version 9, has a lot of exploits in them. Okay, vulnerabilities, sorry, not exploits. The idea is that the file that you're getting, the PDF file that you're getting, has a code in it, embedded in it, to exploit this vulnerability. Now, imagine I take this PDF and I turn it again to PDF. So I take all the text and I turn it to PDF again. I take only the text, not the embedded content. Once we do that, it's flattened out and it's clean. And once you activate it on the machine with a vulnerability, there's no code to exploit that vulnerability. So you're in the clear. Does that make sense?
Hopefully that answers your question there. If you have any follow-up questions though, yes, it does. Fabulous. to the gentleman that asked. If there are any other questions, please do send them to your Bytes account manager and post the webinar. Just to thank, all that really remains for me to do is to thank Sagi very much for joining us all the way from the Middle East, virtually over the line. Thank you all for taking the time out of your very busy diaries to attend today. And lastly, just to encourage you, please do take the time to fill in the short survey after the call so that we make sure that these briefings hit the mark in future. Thank you very much, everyone, and good morning.
Thank you.